Now, Carl, you had experience with your EIS. You took all this work, you interviewed everybody, you came to Olana, and you then presented it to the NRC, and how did they feel about it?
Yeah, let me first, at the beginning you said I'd interview people. I have two copies of the survey that I used to interview people up here. It had a couple of pages of demographic and opinion information, and then photographs that we asked people to rate. And we were able to statistically evaluate these collections of photographs and ratings on photographs in the survey. So the staples are a little rusty, but but you can look through those, and you may recognize some of the areas from 34 years ago. And I had really, I've told Dorothy some of the real drama that I had on my end down in Tennessee working on this was with the NRC and just getting approval to do the survey. This was a sensitive time for anybody doing any kind of surveying, and the idea of a photo thing they didn't really understand. But just getting, just going to the public and getting permission to go to the public. They're afraid I was kicking the hornet's nest, and people like Loretta would begin to multiply. And so they were very, there were a number of small little fights that, unbeknownst to the people up here, that I'm having down there. And I really didn't win them. I had all kinds of support from people who had been there, much older and wiser than me, who really backed me. And it was a wonderful way of watching your tax dollars at work, because you had this collection of scientists who, the first thing they did when they smelled that I had controversial work was get it done and get it reviewed. And they told my boss to get it reviewed by the best people you can possibly find and pay whatever that costs. And so we got it out, and when we got the results back, and they were critical but supportive. And once we had that, a national scientific laboratory worked just like it was supposed to. It works on peer review. That's how science works. Once the peer review was in, I had the management behind me, and as it got hotter and hotter and hotter within there, my management, about 4 levels up, said we have to go to the people at the very top of the laboratory, because they're going to get phone calls from Washington, and we don't want them to be blindsided. We want them, when people in Washington say, "Do you know what Petrich is doing?" He says, I want them to be able to say, yes, we've had it reviewed, and he's presented it to us, and we fully support it. And those phone calls came, and that's what happened. And the NRC at the very end, about 5 weeks before the EIS the environmental impact statement was to be published, the highest people at the NRC were just beginning, to find out what all this was about. And they said that we can't accept this. And we can't publish it. And Oak Ridge said, fine, we'll publish it ourselves, and we'll tell the public why we're publishing it. And that's the story you don't know here. And now it's on videotape, and I'm in big trouble.
And it is now available on the internet.
Yes. So none of this is really documented. These are the kinds of things that don't end up on paper. But that's what the story
And what's
was.
extraordinary, too, is the amount of money that the federal, we're having bake sales up here in Greene County, and the federal government's spending for all sorts of people to work on this project.
Yeah, where you're having bake sales, I had 2 years of full-time work on this. And so I had resources and ultimately power, and you were striving for both. But it all works together. I and other people wouldn't have even worked on it without you squawking about the draft environmental impact statement being so deficient.
We did squawk.
Mm-hmm. You were heard.
So, Rick, why does it matter in terms of what happened at Cementon and Olana, and how it changed the country?
Well, I can say this with great certainty. I'm retired from NCON. I spent 30 years there doing this subject, going from trial to trial to trial. And Olana was the first one. It turned out to be the most important one, because it is the basis by which today the DEC reviews all applications with respect to aesthetics. There's a policy called Assessing and Mitigating Visual Impacts, which institutionalizes how the subject should be done. And the primary basis of it is that designated aesthetic resources deserve special attention, and under the law, they get it by having to have applicants minimize impacts to the maximum extent practical, consistent with social, economic, and other essential considerations. That's seeker, and the only way to do that is to identify a resource and then figure out how to mitigate those impacts. And that's how it's been done. The policy's been there for 10 years. Maine photocopied it. It's in Europe. It was used in Pennsylvania, so it's spreading because it is an objective way to deal with a very subjective subject. And this case and that view started it all. It started everything that's in it, right there.
And you can't preserve a landscape like that. Loretta would still be baking. You both would be. And so you can only protect it. So, and then you get into the politics and the give and take of the regulatory agencies and how do you, if you can preserve it, you've won. But that's not going to happen when you've got tens of thousands of acres. So it's coming up with a way to protect what is essential and be willing, in the political give and take to let development where appropriate proceed.
And Rick, I think you should make clear that this important change in the state procedures affects not only power plants, but any large project that requires a state permit. I mean,
in fact, every discretionary permit, even if it's local levels, they've got to do seeker too. And they have the same responsibilities. So it's everything that isn't what they call ministerial. You get a fishing license, that's ministerial, you get it, you apply, you get it. But anything that's discretionary has to go through that review. And in the discipline of aesthetics, here's its start, right here. At least in this thing.
I just want to say that I'm sure all of you have been on the tour to Olana. And if you have seen, whether or not you remember these winter scenes, or at least one of them, in the corridor just east of the studio. And so you look out the window and you see the view that he was painting. That painting changed history. And it's very important, and this is especially for Kimberly, it's very important, Kimberly Fluke, the new site manager, that everyone who visits Olana and takes the tour is told, no matter if it's only 20 seconds, that something very important happened 6 miles down the river because of that painting and because of what Church's aesthetic and his siting of his house, and that because we have trouble persuading people that historic houses are relevant to the 21st century, especially younger people, that this has affected their quality of life in a very dramatic way, just as the St. Lawrence case did a few years later. And so it engages the visitor in the mind and the accomplishment of a man dead now for 112 years in the 21st century in a very direct way. And so I hope that will be part of the tour and so much else to do with the landscape of Olana and the Viewshed.
So these are our heroes, and we're very happy to have them here today.